We're almost 2 hours away from my 35th debate with Pastor Jeff Dollar. And last time it took 19 minutes to run through my rough run. I rearranged things, and so now we're counting it. So here we go. The topic of this debate is, can an eternally saved believer apostatize and be saved? Let me explain that title for a minute, all right? But just understand this, that whenever I'm pulling for this debate, I'm going to be pulling for the red cards. And what I mean is that from this chart, the blue are mainly the conditionalists, people that typically believe you can lose salvation in some type of sense. And the red are the Calvinists, and they're mentioned here. The ones that have most commonality with this debate are my debate with Kelly Powers, Sky Out, and now Jeff Dollar is going to be dealing with this apostasy issue. Uh, these two debates were a wash in my view. But here's the thesis. What are we debating? The thesis, notice the red, this is what we agree on. Can an eternally saved believer apostatize and be saved? That's the blue is what we disagree on. See, the reality is I believe that eternally saved people can apostatize and they're still eternally saved. So another way to put it is, yes, Christians can fall away in the temporal realm, but not from the eternal realm. We are eternally preserved even if we don't temporally persevere. So here's the position, experience, ultimate categories that I use to replace justification, sanctification, and glorification. And you'll see here, positional Christian is one who has believed the gospel at least once and therefore is eternally preserved. The experiential Christian is one who is currently believing the gospel but could stop believing it and still is still eternally secure, whether they persevere or commit apostasy. And the ultimate Christian, of course, is when you get a glorified body, no sin nature, and therefore you're perfectly representing. And so the issue is one moment of faith, that initial faith guarantees the glorified body. Sanctification, represented by this broken line, uh, doesn't have anything to do with receiving that glorified body. So here's the thing I want y'all to focus on. Pay attention to the colors: red, yellow, and green. Well, as we're looking at this, I need to move the slide around, but as we're looking at this, remember, I'm debating the Calvinists, but I hold more to the Lotus view of everything. So I'm not Calvinist, so those points may come up in the midst of this debate. So we got green. That's the position I hold to on our traffic light. One moment of faith is sufficient to get a glorified body. The glorified body does not depend on how well one walked. Therefore, whether you hold a persuasion view or a sensus notia fiducia view, uh, this is the best category. Then you have the non-neo-Nomen Calvinists, and I hope Jeff Dollar is coming from that position because it has similarities with free grace. One moment of faith is sufficient to get a glorified body, but saving faith results in certain things in one's walk. The glorified body does not depend on how well one walked, yet one will persevere and not apostatize, and they can, the different views of faith right there. And then you got the neo-nomian, which I don't care for, because they will say one moment of faith justifies, but the results that occur from it are also the condition for receiving final justification, which will determine whether one is saved or not. And then you got the conditionalist who says one moment of faith justifies, but one must persevere and not apostatize to get a glorified body. Okay, so here's the three-legged stool. Free grace is biblical. Eternal security is true. One moment of belief is sufficient. Therefore, there's nothing else necessary. So apostasy can occur, and you're still eternally secure. As far as one moment of vicarious substitutionary death, no one goes to hell because of sin, and so therefore Christ's death guarantees that we will live with him. One moment of resurrection is really the result of everything. But the issue is that there's a passage that talks about two different types of inheritances that people get confused. So here's the stool softener for those that have trouble processing this stool argument. So the thing is that, as I said, one moment of faith is sufficient. Contextually, this is going to be backed up by John 3:16. One look at the bronze servant, one moment compared to one moment of belief. The condition identifying with his death by one moment of belief has been met. Therefore, we will be resurrected with him. We'll see that from 2 Timothy and also the Romans passages. So this was my structure in previous debates. I'm still tweaking that, so let me go on forward. This is just going to be my final slide to describe things. Just keep this in mind. If one moment of faith is sufficient, to get a glorified body, look at the middle column in green. Nothing else is experientially necessary. That's what I'm hammering home. Remember this chart about Spider-Man, because the issue is you got once bit, so you're in the believed once class. You're and therefore you're no longer in the never believed once class. Now you can either fulfill your purpose or not, by apostatizing or whatever, and but you still don't lose the glorified body. That's guaranteed to you. The reward is what will be affected. Okay, so I want to give you this description before I show you the actual pictures. I want you to think about this. Faith is an instrument that places you into a new realm. Faith is a rocket ship that transfers you into a new realm. So picture faith like a rocket ship. Then it goes through a wormhole, and then while you're going through this wormhole, it causes a molecular transformation. If the rocket ship blows up, it does not reverse that you're in a new realm. You are now a citizenship of a heavenly space station. You could choose to live in harmony with that citizenship, or you could choose to return to the temporal realm in a fallen world. Your return to the temporal realm does not reverse your citizenship in the eternal realm based on that molecular transformation. Okay? Here's the comparison in John 3:16 of one look. Here's the passages if we need to support that. And then John 3:18 distinguishes the never believed class from the believed once class, because it says that he's condemned that has not believed already. And then this also reminds us of the never believed bunny and also the one believed cat. So remember this: all bunny rabbits go to hell, and all cats go to heaven. But this is the thing: nobody goes to hell because of personal sins. What happens is when people see fleas on the bunny, they think that's why they went to hell. But no, they go to hell because they're bunny rabbits. Okay, shouldn't be an issue in this debate. Here's the spaceship, the wormhole, the molecular transformation. There's the passage of pass from death to life, John 5:24, supporting that. Here's an illustration. Your new position gives you a new potential. You can live in that fallen world and you're using your apparatuses and powers, or you could be like a bum Spider-Man in that world, to mix metaphors or analogies. Okay, so going into this, there was an ad back in the day. What do you want on your tombstone for tombstone pizza? This is a reminder that we've died with Christ. 6:2, we who died. It uses the resurrection language. Shall be in the likeness of resurrection. Look at this. And Christ Jesus said will also give life to your mortal bodies through the Spirit who dwells in you. So this is a promise that everyone that believed, who died with Christ, in other words, is going to get a resurrected body. Okay? Here's a comparison with 2 Timothy 2:10 and 13, which we'll talk about in a minute, as it relates to Romans 6 and Romans 8, which we'll talk about. Listen to this. It is a trustworthy statement, for if we died with him, we will also live with him. Well, Paul's already explained in Romans 6 what he means by death. For he who has died is freed from sin. Now, if we die with Christ, we believe that we shall also live with him. And in narrow and home again, Romans 8:11. But if the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies. Okay, here's your reminder of the chart. Focus on the rank reward aspect for a second as we're coming to this passage. So this passage talks about chosen. This is for service, and it says obtain salvation. This is not positional salvation. This is salvation in terms of Messianic kingdom rule and rank. That's why it mentions glory right here, and with eternal glory. So the promise is that if we died with him, we will live with him. In other words, if you believe the gospel one moment at a time, identifying with his death, then that guarantees that you will get a glorified body. So that is key to understand. Then you have, if we endure, we also reign with him, and if we deny him, he will deny us. That relates to the two possibilities, either a ruling with Christ or being disinherited. All right. But regardless of that, God is faithful to his promise to give us the glorified body as well as to hold us accountable. I've done the illustration where if I tell you aboard my vessel that you will reach your destination, same comparison here, but I'll hold you accountable while you're on the ship. Okay. Here's that passage gone through the chart in this way. Now 8:17 says this, and if children, heirs also, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ. Then we have an if statement, if indeed we suffer with him, so that we may be glorified with him. I take the if statement as modifying heirs with Christ. So while all believers are inherit God, not all believers will be joint heirs with Christ. That's conditioned on them suffering to rule with them. Okay. Here's the variables you can run through the chart. Here's how I see it. And so you see right here, this passage is fellow heirs and glorified with is the second category of rank related to that. Now, one thing that happens is when people come to Second Timothy, some people want to look at the conditional clauses as you can read one into the other. I believe that each one of them is a closed system, okay, rather than an open system. And so what that means is that each one has an eternally consistent logic. This means the condition if statement is for the then statement. If we die with them, we will also live with them. This is an example of a grammatical condition. There are other ways to have a condition semantically or contextually. Grammar often determines doctrine. And there are three additional clause statements that follow, okay? But the issue is each conditional clause has eternally consistent logic. And so the issue is that people try to say it's the same thing or it's a condition for the previous statement. Well, we got some problems. We got shifts and tenses here. And so it's not the same thing. Something is going on here, and we got to talk about it. I think my view accounts for the information here. I'm not so sure that other views do. The shift from the aorist to the present tense is significant. What does died with him mean in 2:11? Romans 6 helps answer that. So here's the passage going in more detail about Romans 6, just supporting my arguments. I also have yellow, I think is positional, green is glorified, and then the pink down here shows you that being dead and considering oneself the dead are two different things. So that relates to the walk. So here we are going through this passage. Said the only condition for getting a glorified body is identifying what Christ wants in his death. That's the only condition. This is not a if A then B except C situation. 2:11 talks about position, death, and life ultimate. So it focuses on the experience and ultimate, the rank. 2 Timothy 2, if we endure, we also reign with them. This does not support that perseverance will necessarily occur. And it allows for the possibility of apostasy. So we don't need to prove Christian apostates are in the Bible, but because it's still possible, even if I can't point to a case of someone apostatizing in the Bible. It all goes back to the argument about a sufficient, not necessary. Okay. And so the issue, I think one of the issues come up in this debate is why do people think endurance is a required result? Where are people getting that from? And then here's another thing that I want people to understand. This is from a site, marriage.com, that gives 10 common types of cheating. And the reality is, it's all cheating, okay? And the thing is that whenever we're talking about apostasy, it's all cheating to God. Whether it showed up in unbelief or actual apostasy or Satanism by going back to Judaism after the cross, like in Hebrews, or 1 John being guilty of idolatry. It's all viewed that way. Rebellion, lack, apostasy, syncretism, it's all experiential unbelief. And it's either the God world or the non-God world. And so that it's either God or Satan. So we can go to golden calf incident. We can go to Judaism post-cross. And we can talk about the implications for that. The thing is that you could even argue that idolatry is ideology. So false doctrine, wrong religious denomination, a wrong hermeneutic can all be forms of idolatry. All right. Here's a reminder that I run every word or concept through the chart. Here's a reminder that the primary view, wherever I get eternal life, is qualitative. It's from John 17:3. God is a perfect parent, bring divine discipline. When I see the word life or death, I ask what type of blessing, what type of cursing is in there based on Deuteronomy. And then that's the backdrop for any warning or encouragement, for example, with divine imagery. And here's the support for that from the Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. Okay, there's the slide saying my timing from the previous one, what I should cut. So I ran through that kind of fast, but I will see where I am on my timing there. And then from that, I'll make my final cuts. God bless, guys.